West Ham versus Aston Villa, a huge game. We say this every week. It is a big game. Every game is a big game for West Ham, but the home games are particularly more important in a sense because that you feel that that's where we tend to get our better results. You know, we haven't got the worst home record, and the fact that we're playing against a side in Aston Villa. Look, we're going to come to them in a minute. A very tough side, but they're not chasing titles and things like that. So you look at this and think we've got a half decent chance. And also, even more important on the basis that Bournemouth have just beaten Liverpool. As I'm recording this, Bournemouth 1, Liverpool 0. Look, I watched the game and I thought Bournemouth played really well, really deserved it. It just feels like every week, we every time we're relying on these, look at these bigger sides sometimes, do us a favour, try and get a result for us in Liverpool this week and Arsenal in previous against Everton and City against Nottingham Forest. All these teams that always just seem to go there and lose and never get a result. And you think, for God's sake. So Bournemouth, as we speak, and as I record this, are now above West Ham. That's the same Bournemouth, by the way, that everyone was saying, well, they're down. They're down. Bournemouth are gone. Bournemouth haven't got a chance. They're with Southampton. They're gone. Well, they're above us now. Yes, we've got a game in hand, but, what does that mean? It's tough. This is a really tough season. It's a really strange one because you look at down the bottom end of the table. I can't really remember a season like this where no one looks like they're gone. There's no team. Usually by now, one or maybe even two teams look pretty gone. Definitely one by now. You'd usually expect one team would be on sort of 20 odd points, and then you'd be thinking, well, they're pretty much out of this and there's only 2 spots left. It gives you a little bit more comfort. But, you're talking about Bournemouth now that are above West Ham, and it just shows you how tough this is, and it just rings more alarm bells, doesn't it? In the fact that we could get relegated, we really could. It's making the Villa game even more important. This is before the 3 o'clock kickoff, so I don't know how the other results are going to go. Obviously, as yet, fingers crossed they go our way. The teams around us all are playing the higher end teams that are chasing European football and titles and things. So you're hoping for favours, but like I've just said, Liverpool didn't do us a favour this weekend. I'm not saying they have to, and we shouldn't continue to be looking at other teams. But when you're down the bottom, this is how it becomes. You are looking at other results more than anything. You're just continually hoping and willing teams to lose. But it hasn't happened again. So, but anyway, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what West Ham need to focus on, what we need to focus on is West Ham ourselves and think that we just need to get our job done. If we look after ourselves, we'll be okay. Aston Villa then coming up. What I like about Aston Villa this season is that they're ambitious and they don't beat around the bush with their decision making. They get it done. I talked about this previously on another video. I think it might have even been a Villa preview when we played them at Villa Park. But basically, what I like about Aston Villa is that they saw Steven Gerrard as their manager. He obviously did pretty well for Rangers, and hence why then he wanted to get a bit of a crack at the Premier League. And Aston Villa made the decision to go and get him. They went to Rangers. He was still in contract at the time at Rangers. They were decisive, paid the money, got Steven Gerrard into the football club. They then realised this season it wasn't quite going to plan. They could just sense that this wasn't working. And they acted swiftly. They didn't muck around. They didn't dilly-dally. They didn't do a West Ham, which was just sit on their hands, wait and wait. We're not, when Karen Brady came out and said it, we're not hiring, firing. That can be admired, admirable. You can look at that and think, okay, fine. But sometimes you do feel like we're just waiting, we're dilly-dallying. We're not decisive enough. It's even ex-WHU employee has said this on Patreon, that the club effectively are looking at this on a game-by-game basis with David Moyes. They just don't know what they're doing. They're just looking at it going, well, fingers crossed, hope this is enough. Whereas Aston Villa, on the other hand, just saw it straight away. This isn't working. Get rid of him. And that's the man they paid for, put him on a decent contract and paying him decent money and paid compensation to Rangers to get him, and went no. They then went to Spain, went to Villarreal and got Emery in and didn't dilly-dally around that. Paid the compensation. I don't know what the money was, £6-7 million, whatever it was. Got their man in, and now look at them. I think they're sitting 11th. I probably should double check, but I think they're comfortable in the league. They're not going to get relegated now. They pulled away from that. Don't forget, when Steven Gerrard was there, they were in the relegation fight. They were really struggling. They pulled way out of it. Did very, very well, and it's paid off. It has paid off. Their decision making, their decisiveness has paid off, and I like that. I like that attitude. I like that way because it shows an ownership and a management structure where they are very close. They can see what's going on. They're not mugs. Whereas West Ham, you just get that feeling that they're just kind of, they're living in a bit in delusion a little bit. You know, you get that feeling that we're sitting around the meeting table and going, well, we're doing all right in Europe, so we might as well keep him. You know, it's almost like they're sort of grasping at straws. And we did all right the other week, though, didn't we, against Forest? So he's doing all right, so we'll keep him. They're not looking at the bigger picture. They're not going, this isn't working. What the bloody hell's going on? Whereas I think Villa have that mindset. So I have to admire it. I'm slightly envious of it. Unai Emery's, I'm not too sure of, I'm going to be honest. I mean, he's done a very good job so far. I don't know whether he's going to be there long term. I mean, many managers aren't anyway. I think for me, he still has a little bit more to do because I still think when you see Villa, they do sometimes throw out the odd poor performance. And that's no disrespect to Unai Emery. He's picked this up and taken on this season. He's done a very good job. You know, I'm not knocking that at all. But they still have a slight soft underbelly, you feel, and they can be a little bit vulnerable. But overall, they're a good side, and I'm sure the Villa fans will be more than happy with the fact that they've pulled away from the relegation fight. They're going to be mid-table. They can then regroup in the summer. I'm sure they're going to spend more money. I think they've got some players out of contract. You can sense there's going to be a bit of a rebuild continually going on at Villa, which seems to be where they are as a football club. They seem to be a club that's still finding their feet. You wouldn't look at Villa now and say, well, they're going to be challenging top 6, top 4 next season. I don't think they're anywhere near that at the moment. I think they're a club that are still trying to put the pieces together, trying to find where they sit. And, obviously they want to be pushing for that sort of level of football, and who can blame them? I mean, that's what we want to be doing. I was hoping, like many West Ham fans, hoping that that's where we were getting under David Moyes. We were getting a little bit of stability, but we've obviously fallen back now, and whatever we've attempted to do this season has not worked at all. Whereas Villa, you feel like are just slightly on the other way. You'd imagine next season there'd probably be a quite top 10, top 8 finish quite comfortably, you would imagine. I quite like the fact as well that, they were decisive in selling their striker, Danny Ings, to West Ham. I think that I quite admired that. I mean, I think at the time, I don't know if it's fact, again, I probably should double check, but Ings being their sort of top goal scorer, main goal scorer for that club, and they still sold him. He was on a high wage there. I think they just recognised it. We don't need him. We can move on. We can deal with the situation, and it frees up wages for them to do other business. I find that decisive. I find that quite admirable. You've got to look at that and think that's pretty good. That's a good way to run your football club. Those sort of decisions we wouldn't do. Do you know what I mean? You just don't think West Ham aren't like that. We just don't behave in that manner. In terms of then tomorrow's game, I mean, I'm recording this just before the 3 o'clock kickoff, so we're now 2:45. So I don't know too much about the teams at the moment. I've got to be honest, I don't know much about the injuries and who's going to be lined up. But in terms of, we're going to quickly focus on Aston Villa. I mean, as I say, Emery's got them playing pretty decent football. They look pretty solid. This is going to be a hard game. Very, very tough game for West Ham. I admire Matty Cash. I think he's a good player. One I always quite admired and wanted at West Ham. When he went to Villa, I was hoping we would actually be in for him. I think one of those many players we were interested in. I'll come on to another in a minute. But yeah, Matty Cash I do like. I think he's done really well there. He's a good player. Adds a bit of pace and that power that you need. Someone I quite like. Another player I really like is who I was just referring to then, Ollie Watkins. I mean, he's in the spotlight a little bit more because he's hitting very good form. He's just a really good, decent player. And one of those strikers, I just look back and think, why didn't we go for him? Why were we dilly-dallying and not doing this? It would have been the perfect striker for West Ham, in my opinion, at the time. He was the ideal for me to sort of work with Antonio at that period, and I just think it would have been a good striker to have available to West Ham. We didn't do it. He went to Aston Villa. He's a very good striker. I think he's on 8 goals this season, and he's in good form, very good form. I think someone West Ham have to be very, very careful tomorrow because we've got to be really on our ball dealing with him. Pacey, great finisher. I wouldn't say the best finisher, but he is good, and he's going to cause us problems. Another one I really like is Buendia. Decent player. I think he creates a lot. I think he's quite the sort of the key cog to the Villa machine and making things work. And when I watch them play, I just admire him. I admire their setup, and Yeah, it's going to be a tough game for West Ham. Really tough. The only thing that's positive for West Ham going into this, it gives you a little bit of hope, is that our record against Aston Villa is actually excellent. We've got a very, very good record against them, home and away. I actually think it's something like 5 or 6 games we've now won against them in concession. So I'm very, very pleased about it. Consecutive matches. So I'm very, very pleased in terms of that. But you look at this and think, where we are at the moment, and the fact that the crowd will be edgy. We're coming off the back of a Brighton defeat in the league. Obviously, I appreciate we played in the league, the Conference League during the week in Europe, but the last league performance was arguably our worst in years. I mean, really poor against Brighton, 4-0, very, very poor. West Ham had to respond. We go into it, though, with our tails up a little bit. We played well, I thought, on Thursday night against Larnaca. I thought the first 10, 15 minutes, I thought the home time looked pretty okay. I thought we had to sort of settle the game down a little bit. But once we did, I thought we played really well. And we never really looked in danger at all. I was very pleased with it. But this is going to be a different world now. We know that. The nerves are going to be there. This is these games now. And if the results don't go our way today in the Premier League and West Ham, we could find ourselves in the bottom 3. Then, the nerves are going to be, skyrocketing, and Villa will know that. They'll be very aware. I'm sure Emery will say, look, if you get an early goal here, this crowd will turn. They will turn. I was speaking to a friend of mine, James, earlier, and he was saying, I get the feeling this could be another Burnley situation. It really could. The fans could turn very nasty if this goes wrong. So I think West Ham has to be very aware of that. Villa will certainly be aware of it, I'm sure, but we have to be. We just cannot afford to go behind in this game. We've got to be right at it. One of them games you look at and you think, come on, show some ambition. Don't show them respect. Don't spend the whole game worrying about trying to stop them scoring. I know I've just said don't let them, we don't want to concede, but we really want to just go at them, get at them and bully them from the first whistle. Go right at them. Show we want to win this game because it's big, very, very big game. As I've just said, West Ham need to respond against Brighton. It's one of the things. I would actually say, in terms of the team news, I'm just going through my notes here. In terms of the team news, this is a little bit early for that in terms of exactly what's going on. I did drop X a message earlier to find out anything. I think at the moment it's still early. He's going to reveal things on Patreon closer to the time. But at the moment, it looks like Fabianski will be out with his injured eye. He had an operation to have a plate fitted. He will not be available, so Areola will be in goal. Soufal, I don't believe is going to be in the side, although I think he's miles away, but I think he's got a heel injury, so I don't think he'll be available. Aside from that, I think the only doubts are Antonio and Flynn Downs. They both picked up knocks, I think, against Larnaca, but I don't believe them to be serious. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we've got a pretty much full strength side, which is good. Now, one thing I want to talk about, and we're going to do a separate video about this with Riley. And this is a bit of a debate. We did do a video on this not so long ago, about a week or so ago, regarding Scamacca and an update on the situation. Now, ex-WHU employee did at the time say that they spoke about Scamacca behind the scenes, the player's happy, etc., because there are rumours going around that he's unhappy and all this sort of stuff and speculation. But that Larnaca game with Antonio starting, I don't know. I'm just starting to get the feeling that Scamacca's not part of the Moyes plan at all. I don't think he's part of that trusted group of players. He's not getting in the team. I mean, we keep talking about, he's recovering from injury. He's come from injury. He's been available now for quite a while, quite a few weeks. He's been training. I'm getting a bit bored of hearing that he's still recovering and he's still not quite. I get a bit very tired of hearing that. I don't think that is the case. I actually think that there is a problem there. That's my gut feeling on this. He's not. When I say a problem, Moyes doesn't like him. It might be his personality. It might be the fact he's lazy. It might be he doesn't fit the system. Whatever it is, I have no idea. But I really get that feeling. This has all the hallmarks of a Hilaire written all over it again, doesn't it? It really does. So I would not be surprised. I don't think. I think. Oh, and another reason I mentioned this as well, before I forget, was that after the Larnaca game, when Moyes was talking in his press conference, I think actually it might have been the press conference prior to this match. But anyway, he was talking about Antonio scoring the goals against Larnaca, and the 2 goals were for his confidence. And he actually said, Moyes, yeah, great for his confidence, and that's what you want. You want your got play, and like the same we need for Danny Ings. We need him scoring, get your striker scoring. Didn't mention Scamacca. Didn't mention his £35 million, Italy's #1 striker. Didn't mention him. Didn't mention his name. That to me speaks volumes. I'm sorry, it does. But ex-WH employee, I did speak to a little bit about it and just said, and I think he will be providing a bit more of an update. We'll look into it a little bit more, find out exactly what's going on, because there's certainly you do get the feeling there's something not right there. As much as we keep hearing that things are fine and the player's happy, etc., things just don't seem right. You know, you've got a player of that quality that's struggling to get in the side. Antonio's ahead of him in a European game. I don't know. Just something's not right. And don't get me wrong, Antonio did really well. I thought he did really well the other night. 2 brilliant. Second goal was excellent. First goal was decent, but the second goal was brilliant. And it's great to have your striker scoring. And that's what we need. So, yeah, that's where we are. Another interesting thing for this match will be the fact that Max Cornet is now back. It appears back available. Now, Moyes is being very coy with this whole Cornet situation. If you remember, when we went over to Larnaca, he sort of expressed the opinion that, well, he's coming over, but he won't play. He's there just sort of like, he's been training, but we don't think he's going to have any involvement. I kind of realised when he said that, I thought, well, that's a bit bizarre. Why would you take a play over if you've got no intention of playing him? So I had the back of my mind, if I bet he comes on, and he did. And I thought he looked great. I was really impressed with him. He looked fresh and lively. And then after the game, he went, well, I don't think he's ready anyway. I don't think he's ready at all. When they asked him the question regarding the game against Villa, will he be involved? And he kind of said no, which makes me think we probably will be involved. So that's a really big positive. On the injury front of side of things, you had to look at West Ham now and think, well, there's no more excuses now. We've pretty much got a full strength side. And if we can keep these players fit, we've got every chance of surviving. Which I can't believe I'm still saying. It still takes me by surprise that we are really in the midst of a relegation battle. But it's results that are just not going our way elsewhere. It's piling the pressure on us. We've got to get a result. But you look at Aston Villa now, and that is exactly what it is now. That a game that I was, originally leading up to our fixtures going, I was thinking, if we get a point, it's not too bad. It's not a bad result, really. As long as we don't lose it, just get something and then look to beat Southampton. I actually am starting to change my mind on that now. I think other results now are heightening the pressure on these games now. You're thinking, no, you need to win this. This is a big game. So dare I say it, it's a must win.